If you had just bought a house, let's suppose it was your first flip, and your dad, who was a contractor, said, "Congratulations, you have just made the worst financial decision of your life." Like, how would you feel? And what do you think your prospects are? Well, that's our next guest, DJ Dubuono. And his dad actually did that. But the good news is it turned into his biggest win. It was what got him started. And no, it was not the worst decision he ever made. Probably it was the best one. Please join Kristi Kandel and I, Erik Stenbakken, as we go through DJ's journey into real estate and flipping. You'll discover that there is no such thing as a detail too small to mention to your contractors. Please join us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm your host, Kristi Kandel, and I'm joined with our co-host, Erik Stenbakken today. And I'm also excited that we have a guest coming on who was part of our local real estate developer masterclass, and he has stories for us. And so I said, oh, you have to be on our Pessimist podcast. But before we get into that, Erik, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You talked about having back-to-back things, and likewise, I'm like, well, am I going to get a workout in before this or not? And the procrastinator in me says, no, you can't do it. And the other part says, like, when are you going to do it if you don't do it right now? So that did happen. And it is back to back. We just got back from a mindset workshop in Tennessee and off to some other stuff here shortly. But I get it. And we have had a little bit of email, text, and so on tag trying to get DJ on. It sounds like we're all a little bit busy people. And like, this is the minute when all our stars align. DJ, how's it going with you, man?
Going very well. Happy to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so nobody tried to blow up your investment asset yesterday, right?
No.
Okay,
they did not.
We've had that happen.
We had
just want to make sure
an interesting story we'll get into later, but yesterday was an exciting day.
Oh man, I hope this isn't a theme for all of our guests here. Right? People won't want to be on the show.
The curse. You're on the pod, and the night before the pod, something crazy happens.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but down the road could be a little risky, but it is what it is.
All right, man. Well, you in filling stuff out, you said you're kind of a sports fan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Diehard Giants fan, for good or for worse. We're not in the best shape right now, but ride or die for the Giants. So huge Giants fan, play a ton of sports, big golf guy, not very good, but I get out there and hack it. I also play some pickleball, Kristi. So
yes,
hopefully we can meet up one day and play some pickleball.
I have another lesson this afternoon. That is my goal this year. Every 2 years, I have to get good at a brand new sport. And I'll tell you what, when it's early on in the process and you suck at something, it messes with you. But I know I'm going to grow and learn from it.
Except
I've been playing golf forever, and it doesn't get easier. Yeah, it's just that's something you can't get better at.
I agree with DJ. I was better when I started golf than after I played for a while, and that was the ultimate insult. I was like, man, this ought to be getting easier for me, but it's not. I don't understand how that works. Well, I understand if you're part of the local real estate developer thing here. First of all, what is that? Let's just say, what is that, and what are you doing with it?
Yeah, so it's something Kristi developed. My sister actually won I kind of sent it out to all my friends, and my sister won it, so kind of hijacked it. But Kristi's great. We networked via Bigger Pockets, and we just had an intro call just to talk about real estate, and she just had great energy. I just knew it's someone that was way further down the line than I was, and I would love to just, in any capacity, just talk to her, gain some knowledge, and she brings great energy and a ton of knowledge. So it's been great working with her so far.
So what is the local real estate developer? What does that mean? Like what even is that?
Yeah. So from my regards, it's, a lot of people are real estate investors, but I guess there's not a ton of real estate developers. Like you hear of probably the local companies that are huge that are doing all development. Kristi's just kind of ingrained everybody that you can do it. You can be a developer. Everyone gets to start somewhere. So just get out there and start developing. Kind of transition the model a little bit from real estate investor to real estate developer.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that we find that, and DJ, you've got a background in flipping, which is to me, that's the closest thing to, if you can flip a house, you can flip a commercial building. And we're not talking millions of dollars in development. We're talking maybe a couple $100,000, and taking that commercial building in your town and doing something with it. And starting with baby steps. You don't need the giant project. Maybe it's dropping an ADU in your backyard. Maybe it's tearing down a single family house and building a fourplex on it. But really, we're just trying to demystify the development process and remove the gatekeeping and really show that anyone can do it. We have over 19,500 cities in the US that have permitting departments. And of that, over 75% of those communities have less than 10,000 people as a population. So again, if you can flip a house, you can become a developer. Yeah, exactly.
So DJ, where are you in your journey now? I hear like this stuff floating around about there was some flipping and now there's a desire to do developing. Where did you kind of start, just the short story, your elevator story here of your real estate?
So I'll go as short as possible. So my wife and I started in 2016. We bought a house, lived in it, fixed it up, and sold it. I call it, Bigger Pockets has their words for burster, wholesale, all that good stuff. I call it a flack, a live-in flip, kind of a flip house hack. So we did that in 2016. Bought it. It was on the MLS, but it was a foreclosure. I viewed it at nighttime, so I didn't get a great feel for it. Mind you, I had no idea what I was doing. I could barely hammer a nail, screw a screw. Like I had literally no idea what I was doing. And so my father and I, again, another night drove past it and he goes, that looks not terrible. And then we moved in the day after New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And my wife and I were like, what did we just get into? Like the anxiety sunk in. Like we're in this disgusting house. We have to live in it. We have to figure out how to fix it up. And I have no idea what I'm doing. So my dad came over that weekend and he confirmed my anxiety and said, "You've just lost all your money. Congratulations. Like, this is the worst decision you have ever made." And I said, "All right, well, I'm set out to prove you wrong." And he came over essentially every weekend to teach me something new, figure out how to fix it up. He was still not convinced we were going to make money on it. And on a piece of drywall, he wrote the number he thought we were going to sell it for. Safe to say we sold it for significantly more, and it all worked out great. Took the profits from that live and flip, bought another live and flip, and then we also partnered with a buddy from college on a duplex, which we still own today, which we got a great deal on that property. Lived in the second live and flip, fixed it up, sold it. We are on our third iteration of it. We plan to stay here essentially until we can afford to build our own house. Lived in it, fixed it up, took a home equity line of credit. And then in 2023, partnered with a buddy from high school, one of my best friends. He has a similar real estate investing story. So we kind of joined forces. And since 2023, we flipped about 7 houses and we have 2 duplexes, 2 single family rentals. And our best deal is a single family rental that we fixed up and we are seller financing it to somebody. So kind of all over the place, but that's been our journey and that's where we're at today.
Cool. So I want to go back. Why would someone do a live-in flip? There's a lot of reasons, but what are some of the reasons and some of the advantages?
You got to be a crazy person to do it. First off, it's not a normal thing. I was just dead set on doing something. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Fooled around with a couple things, and I said, "All right, let's give it a go at real estate." And you hear all the success stories, and you hear the hard work, but you don't really understand what it is until you're living in it, and it's constantly on your mind all the time. But that's kind of, fortunately, unfortunately for me, that's my personality. So I kind of obsess over things. So it worked out for me. Definitely not for everybody, but it was a crazy learning curve. And luckily it worked out and now we're on this road. So it led to something very good.
Every time I do a live-in flip, by the end of it, I go, why? Why did I do this? I'm never living in another property where it's under construction at the same time. My dog's going to eat every contractor that comes in. They're not going to come on time. What's going to happen on this week happens 3 weeks later. And I say all this to, let's look at the clock. In precisely 2.5 weeks, I will be starting another, well, it's a remodel project, but I'll at least be moving to the other side of my duplex to remodel both bathrooms while I'm there and to epoxy my garage floor. So apparently you just have to sign up for torture and just love it.
Yeah. You just love self-inflicted torture.
But beyond your self-inflicted pain here and your apparent joy in it, what are the advantages for somebody who may look at that from the outside and go, well, there's only one conclusion to have here is that they're absolutely insane, which might be one of the reasons, but there are some other very practical reasons why you might want to do this. What are some of those reasons why someone might want to consider this as an option?
Yeah, so we bought the property for $70,000. So buying the property with a mortgage, mortgage was less than the rent. So we're saving on living costs. Gave me something to do, some skills to learn, and we took out some zero interest credit cards. So essentially financed all of the rehab at 0% interest, free money. We did a lot of the stuff ourselves, but in the long term, I'm a finance guy. So looking at the numbers, I said, at the end of this, we are going to make X. And I go, there's no other side job I can get that's going to make me that much money. And essentially looking back on it, we lived for free because we got all of our rent or mortgage money back. And for me personally, it was just a great way to get into real estate and build some money while learning the business.
How long did you live in that before selling it?
Too long. We thought it was going to be like 6 to 9 months, and it was like a year and 9 months. So it was longer than anticipated, but it worked out well.
So it was just under the 2-year capital gains limit.
Unfortunately, yep. Not great timing there.
So for those who are listening, what happens is if you live in a property for 2 of 5 years, you can take the capital gains. Say you bought it for $70,000 and sold it for, I'm just making up a number here, for $150. You could take that gain and you get that tax free. And that does stretch out your project and increase the period of insanity, but it is a tax advantage because if you can take if you go to a job and you earn $50,000, the government's going to tax you on that. If you can do a live-in flip and make $50,000, the government says, well, good for you. You've added quality housing to the market inventory, and as a reward, you get that tax back, or you don't even have to pay tax on it. So that's one of the things that you can do. Would I have a stomach to live in something for 2 years like that? No. I've done some flips that were longer than that. We had one where they used to smoke in the garage, and they smoked in the garage so much, so intensely for so long, I would have to hold my breath from the inside side door to open the garage door. And if I couldn't do that in one breath, I would start uncontrollably heaving. So we had a little mitigation to do. Some of these things, I tore out some carpet in the living room, and my wife says, we tore out all the carpet in the entire house. But she says, what are you saving that for? I said, for the garage floor, for my workshop. She says, that is not even okay for the garage floor. I'm like, oh, you're just such a pessimist with that. And about 4 months later, after living with new carpet, I unrolled this. I'm like, ew, I wouldn't even put this under my car.
Yeah.
So some of the things that we do.
I like what you said there earlier, Eric, about if you looked at it like a job and the government would tax you. But that's the same way, I don't know about you, DJ, but that's the way I look at a live-in flip, and I go, wait, if I'm doing this and if I go, okay, well, let's forget about the fact that this is my home. But if I'm looking at it like a job, yeah, you're going to have annoyances at work. You're going to have things that you don't want to happen. But if it's a job versus your home and disrupting your peace, then it kind of makes it worth it. Short-term pain, long-term gain.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's one of the tickets with that we talk about on this podcast is that this is not get rich quick. Sometimes that
definitely
works,
not,
and sometimes it doesn't. So your dad stepped in and helped you with this, taught you a lot.
Yeah.
How did that relationship, I guess, with your dad go? But kind of like you're growing in understanding, like, oh, I get it. That's how you do this. That's how you do that. Was any of this stuff that you discovered like, wow, I should have gotten a doctorate from MIT before I got into drywall patching? Are these things learnable? So, how does that work?
Funny story about that. So drywall patching, again, no idea what I was doing. My dad came over and he's like, all right, we're gonna start with the walls. So we go upstairs and I bring my bucket of primer and paintbrush, and he goes, buddy, you are months away from, like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? So that was my drywalling, taping 101. I was like, okay, I clearly am in over my head. But I always said, and if you know my dad, he should have his own reality TV show. Just an Italian guy from the city, moved up upstate New York, and he's electric. The stuff he says is hilarious, and he's not trying to be funny. Our relationship, he came over, and he's one of my best friends. We hang out all the time. My wife would leave because he would be so happy. As soon as he stepped in the door, the mood would change, and he would just be angry, pessimist, not happy to be there. Not what he wanted to do on a Saturday morning was to help me fix up a house, which he does Monday through Friday. So it tested the relationship, but I think we came out better for it at the end.
Awesome. So talk about your learning curve with learning new skills. How did that feel? How did that go? Was everything super easy, super difficult? How'd that unpack?
Super difficult for sure. But I will say it did give me a level of understanding and setting standards, because The first two houses I've lived in, we fixed it up ourselves. And now whenever we have contractors, and I'm not a expert by any means, but I take the time and I do it right. We could spot imperfections in every home we buy, every home that's rehabbed. It's just, you can just notice it. Unfortunately / fortunately, it's a gift and a curse because you're
That's
never
right.
going to be totally happy with someone else's work, but you know what it should look like and how it should be.
That's a great
You can
point.
spot imperfections in drywall. You can see pieces in floor that's not correctly, if it's vinyl clicked in, if they didn't go under the molding correctly. It's just, you can just spot things super quickly that most other people aren't going to notice.
I think that's a really, really interesting point that you bring up, because many people in the investing space will go straight to hire it out, build your team, have everybody else do it. And you sit back, with a computer and you just move money around and everything's just going to happen for you. And when it comes to money, we've said nobody watches your money like you do. And you're saying nobody watches the quality of construction renovation like you do, but you have to know what that looks like. If they're putting in 1/2-inch tile and they're stacking it right up in front of a dishwasher that's already under the cabinet, you can go, okay, whoa. Dishwashers don't live forever, and I'm not tearing out this entire tile floor just to swap out dishwashers. We're not doing that. I know that because I was in a house this week where that happened. They had to pound out the tile in their kitchen. And of course, they can't get matching tile now.
No, of course not.
But that is so important that you have to know what it is that should be happening. I worked in media for a while and had a boss who didn't really know how media was put together. And she'd come down and say, well, I need a video. How long does that take? And one of the people would say, oh, probably 2-3 months. Yeah, probably so. No, should have been 2 to 3 weeks. But hey, she didn't know the difference, right? And so this person could get basically a couple months vacation. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, right? But you have to know what it is that you're asking for and what done looks like.
Yeah.
For some expectations.
We had April in episode 5, I believe, and she was out in Lake Tahoe and was actually someone who helped me to where I was hiring everything out because I was working at multiple companies, multiple things going on. And she's like, no, you're going to learn how to use a drill because you're not going to pay someone $100 to put up curtains. You're going to learn that you go boop, 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 it's done. And once you know what it takes to do, then you can know what it should cost to hire it. She's like, I'm not letting you get taken advantage of. So yeah, now I know enough to be very dangerous across the board, and also know I don't have the patience for drywall sanding and painting. I don't have the patience to cut something and do it. I'll do the demo and then I will hire everything else out.
Yeah, like you, DJ. I know what the people who did my my office here did a stellar job. The contractor that built this place was outstanding. So I know what good drywall looks like. And after seeing a drywall artist, that's what I'm going to call them, do what they do, then I'm like, that is an art. It is an art, and I know what it looks like, and I know what bad work looks like, but I also know I don't want to do it because I know I am not that artist. So these things fit together. So you wouldn't be on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast if everything went 100% according to plan. That's not a surprise, right? You signed up for this.
It rarely ever goes 100% according to plan.
Right. Well, you didn't quit. I mean, you're still rolling with stuff. So take us through a story of something that kind of was like, man, that I would have had that go differently if I could wave a magic wand. What was the deal? How'd you get into it? What happened?
Yeah, it was one of our most recent deals. Property that we bought, it was going into tax foreclosure. We ended up getting it out of tax foreclosure. Bought the property at a discount. We thought we were getting a discount. The rehab needed was significantly more than we anticipated. I ran into issues the whole way through. It's just compounding. And my partner's more of the kind of the rehab guy, so God bless his heart for dealing with a lot of that stuff. But it weighs on you a ton. We had some new contractors that we haven't used before, and they started off super hot, and they were in there doing all this great work, and then we're getting texts like, hey, we're almost done, we are done. And then we get there and it is like it's nowhere near being done. So we went over and we went through the list, and we went through about 7 iterations of that. It's done. And we're like, it
Of
is
being
not done.
done. It was done 7 times.
It wasn't
Right.
done.
Yeah, I get
Um,
that.
and the guy was a good guy, right? He had a bigger business. He had a lot of other projects going on. He was kind of dealing with the information he had. But, luckily or unluckily for us, we're close enough by where we can go check out our properties. If this was something, 7 hours away, that would be a different story. But luckily it was a half hour away. We could go check it out. We could come up with a punch list. We could put the tape on the wall and everywhere that needed to be done. So it ended up most recently. We got some good tenants in there, and this will be the first month where it's rented out. So now the property can kind of hopefully sustain itself and go from there. But it is always worrying about things, and like you said, it never, very rarely goes according to plan. So we learned a ton from this one. We learned skills we need to do in our processes to manage new contractors better, because some of the old contractors we work with, they know what we expect. They're very communicative. When you find someone new, you're kind of feeling them out, they're feeling you out. They don't know what you like, you don't know what they like. So we need to do a better job at documenting things, both written and orally, instead of just saying like, hey, this wall needs to be done. We need to say, what needs to be done, where it needs to be done, just the steps in documenting things better. So it was definitely a big learning experience for us. Cost us some more money, but my partner always says it's the tuition payment we made on this property. So, you pay a little bit, but you learn.
So take us through that. What does that look like now? If you've got a property, and as you're developing the system, sounds like this is kind of just still a work in progress. No pun intended there. Actually, that makes an excellent pun. Let's go with it. So you're putting this together, and how do you communicate what is in your head? Or is that where it starts? Do you have to really get a really clear picture in your head? Except like, I imagine I walk in here and the house is done. What does done look like? Like literally down to the baseboard and the texture on the wall. How do you outline all that, and how do you communicate that to your contractors?
So I'll tell you the way we used to do it and the way we're going to do it going forward. So the way we used to do it was we thought we were being detailed, and we would put a list together, and like, we said like put tile in the kitchen. We didn't say add trim around the tile. We didn't say, what color grout we want. We didn't say any of those minor details, but those were some of the stuff that were now overages. Those costed more money. So going forward, we're going to just go. Another thing is when we get in it, we're super excited, right? We want to get this project done. We need to take more time to walk through the property, document what needs to be done at a very detailed level. And we're going to send that out almost as a contract to say, hey, this is what we expect. We expect the walls to have zero imperfections, right? Or, if it's a super old house, 95% zero imperfect, 95% perfect, just better documentation on what our expectations are, what needs to be done, have them sign off on it. So there's now a paper trail. There's no way that they can't not understand what we're expecting. Before, it was just like that. Well, I'm sure there will be, but at least we have a document to go back to debate over.
True.
We just had an email that would say, paint the living room, sand the floors, and tile. We will be significantly more detailed going forward.
So take us through that. Okay, so what did you just say? You said paint the living room, sand the floor, and so what would that was what you would have done first version. What would you do now? Let's just take those two things. What would that look like now?
Yep. Sand the floors to zero imperfections. Use a high gloss, semi gloss, whatever that may be. If there's any discolored wood, which we would mark off and say, these planks need to be replaced. Remove trim. When you add trim back, it needs to be caulked. We wouldn't have said that before. Instead of just saying drywall repair, we'll take them through each and every portion that needs to be repaired, sanded completely smooth, because a lot of these guys will just unfortunately, you don't know this, but with your perfect background, but a lot of times it's just mud standing, and you look at it and it's just this big hump, and you're like, okay, that looks like garbage.
I've seen, trust me, I got properties where they just put on the first coat, waited 15 minutes, maybe went to lunch, and then come back and just painted it. And not only is it now rough, it's painted in that.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
So again, and then if there's any crown molding, right? Paint the crown molding, add caulk around the windows. Just being more detailed instead of just paint and sand the floors. So instead of those two line items, it'll be 2 pages worth of details.
I'm
Right.
sitting here laughing because for the bathrooms I'm going to remodel, I did the bathrooms on the other side of the duplex last year. And we documented all the lessons learned. So we have a whole list of additional parts that I'm going to include on the Home Depot 0% order, but also a whole detailed list of, oh, by the way, do this and that and this and that, all the way down to when you put the towel bar into the bathroom, put it into a stud and use anchors. Like, let's make sure it stays in the wall so it doesn't fall off when the guests come 6 months later and they go, oh, your towel rack in your brand new bathroom came off.
Yeah.
So I got to add that to my list, Kristi. I thought I was thorough.
I just made a mental note of that right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
You know,
just
the other thing that happens all the time, they'll do new shower valves and they'll put it all in, but there's settings on the valve. And so we'll get the first guest that says, the water's cold.
It's too cold.
Literally
Too cold, yeah.
take it off, turn the valve, make it hot. And so now every single time I tell the guys, make sure the valve is turned to very warm or hot. Like, just put it on the hottest setting.
Yeah, the hot water limiter. I had one of those off 2 days ago.
Well, and you think there's a bigger issue, and then once you solve it the first time, you're like, okay, at least it's pop it off, turn it, boom, done, and you don't have this major problem. But at first, you're just like, oh, what is happening?
Yeah.
So I love this, DJ, that there's no, what I hear from that is we think of that as like, oh, that's just a detail. It's not a detail. It's a line item. It's a thing that has to happen. And if we don't specifically, overtly say, and this needs to be gray number 16 caulk from this brand, here's
with this finish.
I looked at the, and you need to seal the grout when you're done with this product, 2 coats,
Seal it.
Yeah, it's just like otherwise those things that we would do just don't get done because, hey, I got to think about this from the contractor point of view. Is like, if they just said, put in the tile and I put in the tile, I'm done.
Yeah.
But if you said 1/8 of an inch gaps all the way, and you want gray grout, and you want it wiped to below surface, and you want the surface of the tile cleaned, and you want the grout sealed, and you want it done twice. And this is really important for us as investors to think about. Don't be surprised if that costs more. Like if the first guy gives you the grout and he says like, I'll do that bathroom for you for $1,500. And we're like, yes. And the next one comes in and says, that's $2,500. We're like, what's wrong with you, buddy? And then the first guy, he's not spacing the tile. He's not. I had a contractor once literally hold the tile. It was a Schluter. If you're familiar with that, it's kind of like the waterproof membrane. And he decided to start at the top row of tile. They're 12 by 12 tiles. So to keep them from sliding, he stuck a knife under every single tile through the Schluter siding. Which, by the way, guys, that's like perforating your rain jacket. Okay, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So there's a reason sometimes some are cheaper than others. You want to find out, what are you including? I just went through this on a roof bid with somebody. Said, well, did the other guy include a ridge vent? What are they doing with the gutters? And so this idea of just really breaking down the details and understanding that your bid might be higher than you want it to be at the front end. But if you actually want it quality, your numbers are going to be up, but they'll be on the back end. And you'll be trying to find somebody else to finish it, but it's 3 weeks later. And now you can't move your renters in. You can't take pictures for the listing. And you're like, this is not winning.
And you think you're saving time and money when you're doing it initially, but then you realize and you're like, wait, I just spent more money and more time fixing it. So having those details clear from the beginning and being able to get it dialed in with the pricing, it saves you a world of hurt on the back end.
Yeah. And like I said, in our opinion, we're like, okay, we get there one day, we write down, jot our notes, we send it to a contractor, boom, they can start next week. Great. Like you said, Kristi, in the long run, if we were to spend a week there documenting details instead of having them come back 7 times, then instead of those 7 extra weeks, 1 week versus 7 weeks, it costs a ton of money. And to your point, we were frustrated, but we weren't mad at the overages because, like you said, we didn't initially ask for those things. We didn't ask for the caulk. We didn't ask for all this extra. So it does add up. And at least if we were upfront about it in the beginning, we could have budgeted a little bit better. But again, was our tuition payment.
And everybody pays that.
Yes.
Everybody pays that in one way or another. Maybe you learn that stuff in an internship, or you learn that stuff in an apprentice situation, or you learn that by doing. As painful as the story is, DJ, I like the idea that you threw yourself into this first live-in flip, and you're like, there's no way out but through.
Yeah, gotta succeed. That's the only way.
And sometimes that is the motivation that we need, because here you are. I didn't count up how many properties that is since then, but it's a few, right? You would probably have 0 of those if you hadn't just jumped in and been like,
Absolutely.
no, we got to just do this.
There's always a way to not do something. There's always a reason to not do it. So if you get yourself in it and you have to do it, there's no way out.
It's terrifying, but it's also true. But here you're on the other side of this. You're working through things, right? But you're doing more things mentally. So you talked about skills development and managing your contractors. What about your mental game? How has that changed? How have you grown there? And what are you working on right now to expand that part of real estate investing and development?
Yeah, so ironically, I am probably the opposite of a pessimist. I am super optimistic in every situation. So I'm always, eager. I want to go 150 miles an hour. Going through this process has taught me a little bit of patience to kind of reel it in and to think about things and to slow down and to, a flip may look great on the surface, but then when you start thinking about different things, you have to take those into consideration. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I do need to slow down. Maybe I do need to think about X, Y, and Z, negotiate here. So it's using the optimism when I should be using it and reel it in when I should be more practical. Is kind of the balance I'm trying to play.
What role does your wife play in this? Is she more the realist, or are you both optimists, or how does that go?
She's pretty optimistic as well. She actually just got her real estate license, and she's crushing it. She's doing a great job. But yeah, she's been through the trenches with me since 2016. She listens to all my crazy ideas. She never shot one down yet. There was one that was a little outlandish, and she was like, "I don't normally say things, but maybe think about this." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." But yeah, she's great support. She's awesome.
That's fantastic. So where do you go outside of your circle of a partner and spouse and so on like this for inspiration? You mentioned you're part of the local real estate developers. Is there a community there that helps you kind of get your head around things? Where do you go for other inspiration? Talk a little bit about the local real estate developers, what that does for you.
Yeah, there's a community. There's a school community. The lessons are great. It's funny going back to like the documenting processes. I distinctly remember this was after I took that portion after this whole debacle, and Kristi identified very detailed what you should be doing, and I was like, yeah, we didn't do this. So a ton of learnings. There's the school community to talk to other people. There's great information on there. So a lot of people just like yourself, trying to make it in real estate. So it's very motivating, very uplifting.
Cool.
And sneak, I think by the time this one comes out, we will have launched the local real estate developer podcast. So
awesome.
apparently I love podcasts, and I'm now starting them. So yeah, one of my friends
Fantastic.
who's a broker in Kentucky, he's done tons of pods himself, and he's starting to get into development, and it's the same thing. Like, we want to make this more attainable and to reach everyone out there. So just trying the more resources and information we can put out there to make it just as normal as flipping a house or doing a burr or doing a house hack. That's our goal.
Yeah, no, that's
excellent.
Great. Congratulations.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to cover here that we didn't ask about or that I forgot about?
Or anything that happened yesterday or...
Yeah,
right.
So
we got to
alluded
circle
to that
back
a little
to that.
bit. So it was funny. I was in Houston, Texas for a wedding, and I actually met with Rob Abasolo from Bigger Pockets and just talking about real estate. Yeah, great guy, awesome guy. And just one of our deficiencies in our business is off-market lead flow, just something we're not great at. And so when I got back from Houston, a wholesaler that I haven't spoken to in a while messaged me this deal that was like 3 miles away from my house. We love that area. We love investing in that area. And things don't come up often there. So I was like, great. I was like, I need to see this. And he's like, I can't get you in there until the end of the week. And I looked at the numbers. I saw the pictures. There was one or two concerning parts, but I said, all right, here's the optimism in me. Let's get aggressive. I said, what if I offer you full asking right now? We don't see it, but you cancel all future showings. Took a risk. First time we've ever done this, sight unseen. He said, let me sleep on it. The next day he goes, I'll accept your offer, and you're going to give me a down payment of X. And if we see it, you don't like it, I'll give you half of it. So part of the foundation was a little wonky, and we were trying to get one of our trusted contractors to look at a picture of it. And we finally got connected yesterday, and he said, worst case scenario, looking at this, best case scenario is that. The roof, he said, was going to come under what I had estimated. So I said, let's roll the dice here. Like, you can't get many properties in this area for less. And I'm very, as an optimist, as a business person, I'm very conservative in my underwriting. So typically high-end rehab, and I always try and have two exit strategies. So worst case scenario, we could rent this out, break even, maybe lose a little bit of money, but from a flip standpoint, it should be pretty profitable. So our first sight unseen flip, it was very hectic to make the decision, but we're going with it.
So I'm curious, what was it about this property or area that made you say, I want that in that spot? What was, because there's something there that would make you take a risk like this, because it is a risk, but it also sounds like it's calculated. It wasn't like you're like, I don't know, I'll throw a dart and we'll just offer sight unseen.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. First is the location. The location's great. My wife, as I mentioned, is an agent in the area. She's been showing houses. For the ARV, what this is going to be like a medium to smaller on the price scale. There's nothing for that price in the area. It's, the ARV in this property is probably 350, and in this area, it's very tough to get anything for under like 600,000. She deals with a lot of buyers that she's showing properties to that are in that, say, 325 to 375 range, and they're going for 40 to 50,000 over asking. So again, I was very conservative in my comps, very conservative in my ARV. I think we're going to do better than that, but worst case scenario, we know where we're going to be at. And then the flip itself, besides the basement situation, which we think isn't going to be a huge deal, is pretty cosmetic, and that's kind of our wheelhouse. We've done a ton of properties like this, so it's kind of just normal course of business for the rest of the house. So pretty confident it should be a quick one as well. And then on this one, we're going to do a raise from friends and family. Yeah, we'll come into something that's completely
so you saw me smiling there.
Yeah, something along.
You're like, yeah, the list of rehab is really short, and we're like, no, DJ. Remember,
the other thing is, again, like I said, like my partner likes to reel me in a little bit. He's like, well, we haven't looked at or thought about the septic system, and I'm like, didn't even think about that. But that's another risk that the wholesaler said they've never had issues, but again, you don't know until you get in. So
is it located on your property?
On my property?
I asked that because I was at a real estate meetup on Monday night, and a guy bought a flip in Tampa, and turns out his septic system is on the neighbor's property, and there's no easement.
You just brought a whole new thing of anxiety into my life with that comment. No,
DJ, that's what we're here for.
No, we gave him, so like he thought his recourse was to sue the seller who was ghosting him. And we ended up brainstorming in that session, and he has like 5 different scenarios of strategies that he could do. Because suing for 20 grand is not a viable option. That just, you'll never get it back. But it's just one more thing to go. I think we had Rachel on episode 14-ish, and she was saying the importance of getting surveys and making sure that things are properly situated. But just throwing it out there before you're fully pregnant with this, or at least something to look into.
Yeah, we're looking at it Saturday, so we'll kind of figure that out. But it's on an acre of land, so I'm assuming it's well on the property. But now I'm not going to sleep tonight, so thank you.
If you've got an acre, you've got other territory you can run it into if you had to run a second
field. The very worst case, even if you had what was 20, I think this guy in Tampa was 20 grand to move it and build a new one on his site. So it just eats away a little bit at the profit, and then that goes into the education.
Yeah, tuition payment.
Tuition, you got it.
And when you check that off, just send me a text and say, it is on our property, Kristi. Stop giving me panic attacks and more gray hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Will do.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How do people, if they want to follow your journey, if they want to see how this turns out, they're like, oh man, I hope he posts about this. How could people find you?
Instagram at Donnie Flips Houses. So another quick story. In college, I had like the 7th grade flip haircut. So my friends like jokingly would call me Donnie Flips, and then I got into flipping houses. So Donnie Flips Houses.
Go with it, man.
It's FLIPZ. The cool way to spell flip.
How about Donnie? How was i.e.
Donny. And I go by DJ.
All right.
I never go by Donnie, so it's kind of a
All right.
thing. But
yeah. Awesome. We'll get that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. We'd love to have you subscribe, drop us a review, and share it with a friend. That's the highest compliment you could give us. Thank you for joining us. Come back again.